Well, good evening. Welcome to another Faith on the Frontline, where I have the privilege of interviewing three local people, all about how their faith really affects what they do day to day. This evening we've got Sarah, David and Anthony, and we're going to hear a little bit from their stories. So we're going to start with Sarah. Sarah, I know you've been here since you were 7 or 8 in Bookham, but just tell us a little bit of your family background and what you're doing now.
Yeah, so we moved here when I was 7, so I've been for 30 years now.
30
and
years,
part of Bookham
yeah.
Baptist Church for that time as well, and also sort of part of the Gathering Church in Leatherhead, that family as well. So I haven't moved very far, and I live in Leatherhead now with my husband Dom, and have 2 jobs.
2 jobs?
Yeah.
So what are your 2 jobs then?
So I'm 1 day a week at the moment. I'm a solicitor. So I qualified as a solicitor about 11 years ago, and that's been my background.
Yeah.
But I just do that 1 day a week. And then I moved into teaching about 5 years ago. So I teach at a university, teaching law and a bit of business and criminology and sociology as well. So yeah, keeps me busy.
So how did that kind of come about, and what was your motivation for getting into that?
If I'm honest, I didn't know what I wanted to do. When I was going to uni, I just thought law would be quite interesting. I know I wanted a job where I'd be helping people, but I wasn't sure what that was. So yeah, like some people just know they have a passion for justice. I didn't have that.
Yeah.
So I went off to uni, and then my path kind of unfolded, and I decided I wanted to do law. I thought maybe family. Ended up qualifying and doing criminal defence in a law firm in Dorking called Cowan Solicitors, and have been there ever since. And love the family of the firm and what it stands for. It's a Christian firm.
Yeah.
So it's been amazing to be able to be there and be very open about faith and be able to pray with clients.
Wow.
And then a few years ago, just felt like that sort of season of doing criminal defence and full-time, I needed a change really. And the teaching role, I applied for it and I was offered the job, and I felt such a sense of peace and of excitement, and have loved doing that ever since.
Fantastic. So you now teach a lot of that.
Yeah.
And what's, can you think of something quite recent where, you feel, you can see faith really making a difference to your day-to-day, either the teaching or the legal work?
I think both. It's just ongoing. I think that knowing the bigger picture and knowing that our purpose is to be there and to love people and to show Jesus' love to other people.
Yeah.
I just, at work at the firm, we have some stressful situations around having audits. Being a legal aid firm, there's a lot of different pressures that we get, and we prayed together this morning, and God always unblocks whatever needs unblocking, and that's amazing. And with the students, I think just being able to have the patience to support them, and particularly them having gone through COVID, and it's been really difficult for young adults and their mental health. And again, I think just having a heart for people maybe, and patience and compassion perhaps that I wouldn't otherwise have.
Yeah. No, I really relate to that kind of unblocking, in work and God's role in it. And David, Sarah's been around since she was 7 or 8, but you've been in Bookham even longer, haven't you?
40 years now, just about. And
40 years.
When we came, our 2 children were quite young, 4 and 6.
Yeah.
Now they're mature parents, and very pleased to say they have good marriages and have leadership roles in their churches. And yes, I've been retired 17 years,
Wow.
which is a long time.
And
So
you're married to Elaine, who
I'm
runs a
married
lot of
to
the golden
Elaine.
years, and you've got Fran in this church.
Yes.
Is it Michael, your other son?
Michael and Francis, yes.
Yeah.
We call her Francis.
All right.
Yes, so I go back. I met Elaine in Birmingham at the university,
Right.
and we got married there and worked in a church. I ran a youth group for a good 10 years until we moved away, and Elaine was busy with house jobs and establishing a young mums group and things like that.
Was this all in addition to your job, or was the youth the main?
Yes.
Okay, because we're
I
going to
had
come
to
to a
have
professional youth worker in a sec.
I had to have a career change when at 28 I was made redundant and decided to go into the civil service. And I didn't realise I'd have to study hard and almost the equivalent of another degree, but got through that and progressed. And when we came down here, I in fact was a a teacher for one of our training centres until I moved out into district offices.
Yeah. And when you talked earlier, David, what I heard was a real kind of heart for service in addition to a lot of what you did in work as well. You talked about some of the stuff you did with schools and youth work and others.
Well, I've always thought the letter of James, where they say faith without works is dead. I've always taken that to heart. And in the book of Ephesians, chapter 2, it says we're called to faith, but we're prepared for good works. And so I've always had a number of voluntary jobs that I've taken on.
What sort of things have that involved along the years?
Oh, well, along the years I've done church governor, school governor for some years. I was with the junior church here and treasurer here for some years.
You did youth church here as well, I think.
Yes,
is that you?
That's right.
Yeah,
yes. Well, we called it junior church for the youngsters then.
Yeah.
And I've worked for the National Trust as a volunteer. I've done mediation service for Surrey Mediators.
You started doing stuff with U3A as well?
Yeah,
isn't there?
yeah, and the U3A. And currently I've been doing it since I retired, Help Your Neighbour, taking patients to hospital. And
wow.
That's a regular commitment.
Is there anything that kind of, you think about it maybe recently that sort of stands out? You think, well, this provides real satisfaction. I really feel, as you say, from the book of James, etc., that kind of works of service, things that sort of stand out. And you think, no, that brings real satisfaction, and you kind of sense God in there.
I drove a lady to Royal Marsden Hospital last week. And hearing her story and trying to say, well, my wife had cancer treatment those years ago, and it can be good, you can recover. And hopefully that was encouraging and positive for her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's interesting to relate with Sarah talking about coming alongside people in the neighbourhood, in the community, and just providing works and service. What I might do, David, is because you talked about running youth church, etc. Anthony, we've got our full-time Christian youth worker here, Anthony. But you've got quite an interesting story. Not least, I always remember kind of taking my kids and bumping into you in the reptile store down at Clandon.
Yes.
But tell us a little bit more about your journey.
Yeah. So, bit of a backstory. So I've been here joined since I was 7, so I've been here 23 years as part of the church. So I've been here 23 years.
We've got long-termers this evening, haven't we?
Yeah, you can't get rid of us, really. That's it. Just linger around. However hard they try, we stay firm. So been here for 23 years. Grew up in Bookham, but then got a job at the reptile shop in Clandon, but have always had kind of this heart for young people, always being involved in youth work in some way, shape or form. So whether that be through scouting, so I went through scouts.
That was quite early on, you said.
So I was about 11 when I sort of came back as just helping out at Beavers, helping run the games. And it's just starting off doing the really small things, nothing sort of major, but just carried on and journeying with it. And then even through church, just kind of getting just any activity that there was, if they needed a hand, I got involved with that. So that's always sort of been around. But equally love working with animals as well. So I did think there was a time that actually I would want to work with animals. So I studied a foundation degree in animal management, which is coming really handy working with young people. It's been great. Very transferable skills, I have to say. So all that time studying that foundation degree, and then got a job, as I said, at Clandon, the reptile shop. And I was there for probably about 8 years. Started when I was 18.
Quite a while then.
It's been there quite a while. But sort of midpoint of that, working at the reptile shop, I went to Lanzarote to study scuba diving. And so it's a time, when I was out in Lanzarote, it was sort of a time for me to search, a time for me to find myself, which I didn't quite know that's what I was sort of doing, but that's on reflection, I think that's kind of why I went out there. And it was when I was out there, we had 3 school groups come out, and when they came out, I just really came alive, and I was kind of going, okay, God, what's in this? Why is it, especially when sort of young people turn up, why do I really sort of become alive, sort of the person you've created me to be? Where is that? What's that about? And as you do, you sort of contemplate on it a bit, and then you go, I've thought about that. We shall park it, and we'll carry on with the plan that I have. And so the plan that I had was to then, because I love scuba diving, was to then go on cruise ships, because it was a good way to, in my opinion, to see the world, and then dive at various different dive sites and just see what there is. And I was getting all geared up for that, ready for that, and then the Lord once again intervened to think that he had a better plan than I had. I mean...
Can't believe it, can you?
I know, right? I know. Person who thinks he created everything thinks he knows what's best for me. And so then brought me back. I then carried on with the reptile shop, and then when I came back, I got involved with the youth group here at Bookham. And so that I was 22, so I was only out there for 9 months, so not long at all. So came back when I was 22 and got very much involved with the youth work here. 25, I bought a flat. And so then obviously buying a flat, you have a mortgage, and so it's like, I need money to pay for this mortgage. So my boss couldn't give me a raise, and so I thought, well, if youth work's clearly on my heart, and of course I've had 3 years now being with Bookham to really, suss out that this is probably what God's called me to. Right, well, if I'm going to change jobs, let's change into what God's calling me into, because if I don't do it now, the likelihood is I never will. So just knowing myself, that's probably the angle I was working on. So tried applied for various different places, and I got an interview with a church over in Woking, but that was for a children's and youth worker position, so a combined one. They went, you're great with the youth, you need a bit more experience with the children. And they said it's very obvious you have a heart for young people, but there is a church over in Perthford and they're specifically looking for a youth worker. So email them, drop our name into it, and see what comes of it. And so lo and behold, end of 2018, they offered me a job and I started there 2019. So so yes, I'm now in full-time youth ministry.
Fantastic. And you clearly had that heart. You kind of seem to ignore the old adage that you shouldn't work with children or animals. But you work with both, and clearly it's God steered you through that journey. Just like with Sarah, it's evolved as time's gone by. Is there sort of, as you look back over that journey, are there kind of like particular kids or youth or etc. you kind of think that when you said about feeling most alive, where you kind of felt, well, this is what I'm really about?
I mean, there's all sorts of been different times, but I mean, Soul Survivor is a massive one. So Soul Survivor is a huge Christian festival, and that is really where you see young people really at their most vulnerable, which is great, that they feel safe enough and strong enough to be able to be that vulnerable. But the atmosphere is just completely different, because you just almost, although we're surrounded by God's presence, you just feel it so much more when you're there. So there's definitely sort of young people that I've journeyed with through sort of Soul Survivor through here. And especially at Soul Survivor, where you're just able to come along with them, because you're with them for like 4 or 5 days. So you have the whole day that you can just chat if you want to, or whatever it might be. But there were some really good conversations that kind of came out from that. So, and because you're with them for so long, you can kind of have that conversation, go away, and then come back again. And even within sort of the space of a day or an hour or a meeting, for that matter, the conversation you had, and whether it was like, oh, I'm not feeling God, I'm not this, we might pray about it. They'll have a main meeting, person up front. They then had a word, and we're just like, yes, what were we talking about? So for you. So that just kind of really keeps your faith going. Like, God's there, He's working.
It's fantastic, those sort of highs about that. And there's so many people I know from Bookham Baptist, but other churches I've been with, St Mary's and Fetcham, and they look back on, particularly Soul Survivor that you mentioned, as some of those very formative times. and a particular gift I've always noticed you've had is this kind of, you're kind of mucking about, and then in the next moment actually helping somebody with something quite important. So it's been fantastic to hear from each of you. Sarah and David, in your story, I heard so much about kind of coming alongside, helping people, in a way, Anthony, very much with the youth, and a lot of kind of that experience from Bookham, sometimes 40 years, 20 years, etc., here really coming to fruition. So thank you very much, and thank you for those watching for this Faith on the Front Line, and hopefully this has inspired you about the difference faith makes in day-to-day life. Thank you.